The overhead light died 3 times before Sister Mary finally spoke. Each flicker felt like my heartbeat stopping darkness. Light, darkness, like the universe was giving me a preview of what comes after everything ends. Or maybe that's just what it feels like when you realize the last 21 years of your life were built on a lie. "You have 27 days," Sister Mary said, her voice barely above a whisper, "before you lose everything your mother died protecting." I didn't even know I had a mother who died protecting anything. 21 years. That's how long I'd spent in St. Catherine's Children's Home, believing I was unwanted. Believing my mother had looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the trouble. 21 years of building walls so thick that feeling nothing became easier than feeling everything. And now this. A manila envelope sliding across Sister Mary's desk with trembling fingers that looked like they were letting go of more than just paper. "I should have given you this years ago," she rasped, finally meeting my eyes. "But your mother made me swear. She said if I told you too soon, they'd find you. And if they found you..." Her voice broke. "Forgive me, child. I kept you safe the only way I knew how, by keeping you in the dark." The envelope felt heavier than it should. Inside, a property deed worth more money than I'd see in 10 lifetimes. A hand-drawn map to land I didn't know existed. A birth certificate listing a mother I'd never met, Caroline Tucker. And at the very bottom, a letter that made my hand shake so badly I almost couldn't read it. "Denise, find a tractor. Everything is inside. You have until your 21st birthday, plus 30 days. If you don't claim it by then, the county takes it all. Trust no one. The truth is buried with the past. Your mother, Caroline Tucker. Find a tractor." Like it was obvious. Like I was supposed to know what that meant. "What tractor?" I asked, but Sister Mary was already pulling something else from her desk drawer. Something small and brass that clinked like a promise or a threat. A key. Old, worn, with a leather tag stamped with one word. Tucker. I picked it up and felt the weight of it the way metal can feel heavy with meaning, with 21 years of secrets, with a mother's love I'd never known existed. "She loved you," Sister Mary whispered, and the words hit like a slap. "Every single day, she loved you. But she was dying, Denise. Cancer. And your father." She closed her eyes like she was trying to block out a memory. "Your father was dangerous. Violent. She knew he'd come for you the second she was gone. So she made a choice. She gave you away to keep you alive. And she spent her last 3 years building you an inheritance he could never touch. But there's a catch." Of course there was. "The trust she created expires in 30 days. If you don't find the tractor and claim what's inside before then, the county seizes everything. 187 acres. A farmhouse. Everything she died building. It all disappears." Sister Mary's breath rattled in her chest. "And based on the calendar, you don't have 30 days anymore. You have 27, maybe less." My stomach dropped into free fall. 27 days to find a tractor I'd never heard of, on land I'd never seen, following instructions from a mother who'd been dead for 19 years. 27 days, or I'd lose the only proof I'd ever had that someone had loved me. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice came out harder than I intended, sharp with 21 years of anger I didn't know I'd been carrying. Sister Mary's eyes filled with tears. "Because she begged me not to. Because she was terrified. Because loving you meant letting you believe she didn't." She leaned forward, gripping my hand with surprising strength. "But now you know the truth, and the clock is ticking. So you have a choice to make, child. You can walk away from this pretending you never saw that letter, never held that key. Go back to your life and let the county take what she left you." She paused, and in that silence I heard everything she wasn't saying. "Or you can fight for what's yours. But if you do this, if you go looking for that tractor, there are people who'll try to stop you. People who've been waiting 20 years for this land. People who'll do anything to make sure you never claim it." I looked down at the key in my palm, at the letter written in my mother's handwriting. The deed to land I'd never known was mine. Tucker Homestead, 187 acres. Millbrook County. A fortune if it was real. A trap if it wasn't. I stood up, gathering the envelope, the deed, the map, the letter, the key, pressing them against my chest like they were the only things keeping my heart from falling out. 27 days. Find a tractor. Trust no one. Or lose everything I never knew I had. I walked out of Sister Mary's office knowing 3 things. One, my mother hadn't abandoned me. She'd hidden me. 2, people out there had been waiting 20 years for me to turn 21. And there I had less than a month to find out if the woman who gave birth to me had left me a legacy or a death sentence. The key burned in my palm like it was alive. Like it had been counting down the days, too. I packed everything I owned into one backpack in less than 10 minutes. 3 changes of clothes that had seen better years, a toothbrush I'd stolen from the supply closet, granola bars I'd been hoarding from the cafeteria, and Sister Mary's envelope. The deed, the map, the letter, the key. That was it. 21 years of existence compressed into a canvas bag that barely weighed 15 pounds. I didn't cry when I walked out of St. Catherine's for the last time. No tears for a place that had never been home, just a holding pattern between being born and being released. A few of the younger kids watched me from the common room window, but none of them waved. In a place like this, goodbyes were dangerous. Better to pretend people just disappeared. At the Greyhound station downtown, I sat on a plastic bench and counted my money for the 3rd time, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. $63.47, everything I'd saved from 10 months of bagging groceries at ShopRite. The ticket agent told me the fare to Millbrook County was $47. I handed over the bills and watched my safety net shrink to $16.47. $16 between me and sleeping on the street. The waiting area smelled like stale coffee and defeat. I found a spot near the vending machines and pulled out the map fragment, studying the faded pencil lines like they might suddenly make sense. X marks the spot. But what spot? What tractor? First time on your own? I looked up. A black woman, mid-20s maybe, stood a few feet away holding her own bus ticket. Box braids pulled back. Eyes that had seen too much too young. Backpack that looked as worn as mine. She had that look foster kid, freshly aged out, running toward something because standing still meant drowning. My walls went up automatically. I'm fine alone. She smirked, and something about it felt familiar. Like looking in a mirror that showed me 4 years into the future. Yeah, I said that too. 4 years ago. How'd that work out for me? She gestured at her backpack, her bus ticket, the fact that she was still here, still struggling. Look, I don't know what you're running toward, but trust me, you need somebody watching your back. I'm heading to Millbrook anyway. Construction job. We can split a motel room, save money. I wanted to refuse. Trust no one, my mother's letter had said. But $16.47 wouldn't buy safety. It wouldn't even buy a decent meal. Fine, I said, the word tasting like surrender. But I'm not telling you my business. Mary J., she introduced herself while we waited, just grinned. Don't have to. I already know it. You got that looking for something you lost face. I've worn it before. When the bus finally pulled up, belching diesel exhaust into the October morning, I climbed aboard with my backpack and my secrets. Through the grimy window, I watched St. Catherine's disappear behind rows of identical apartment buildings. The city gave way to highways, then to farmland I'd never seen except in pictures. The map fragment felt heavy in my pocket. X marks the spot. But the spot of what? Millbrook County looked like a place time had forgotten on purpose. Mary J., and I stepped off the bus in a heat that hit like opening an oven door, thick, relentless, the kind that made your shirt stick to your back before you'd taken 3 steps. The main street was 4 blocks of sun-bleached brick buildings, a feed store with bags of seed stacked in the window, a diner called Maggie's Kitchen with a neon sign that flickered even in daylight, an auto repair shop with a hand-painted sign reading James and Sons Mechanics, and a post office that looked like it hadn't been updated since the Depression. This was where my mother had lived, where she died, where she'd hidden whatever she wanted me to find. The public library was a single room attached to the post office, air conditioning wheezing against the afternoon heat. I claimed the only computer while Mary J. wandered the aisles, pretending to browse books, but really just giving me space. My hand shook as I typed Tucker Homestead into the search bar. The results made my pulse spike. Property disputes, tax liens, county seizure attempts spanning 15 years. Current status. Under legal review, claimant deadline pending. This was real. The land existed. The deadline existed. I had 23 days left. I pulled out the map fragment, spreading it carefully on the desk. According to the faded pencil marks, the property was near something called Miller's Crossing. I approached the librarian, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a beaded chain. "Excuse me, do you know where Miller's Crossing is?" She looked up from her catalog cards and frowned. "Miller's Crossing? Honey, they renamed that road back in the 90s. It's Route 47 now, but most of the old farms out there are abandoned." She studied me with the curiosity small towns reserve for strangers. "Why are you looking?" "Dead end." Frustration crawled up my throat like bile. Mary J. appeared at my elbow, reading the situation with the kind of street instinct that kept you alive. "Ask the old-timers," she whispered. "They remember everything." Maggie's kitchen smelled like grease and possibility. We slid into a booth near the window, ordered coffee we couldn't afford, and I started asking questions. The waitress was too young to remember the Tuckers. The couple in the corner booth had only lived here 5 years. But then a man at the counter turned around. He was early 30s, black, with grease stains on his hands and eyes that seemed kind despite the wariness in them. "Did you say Tucker Homestead?" he asked, his voice careful. My heart was hammered. "Yes. Do you know it?" He stood up slowly, coffee cup trembling in his hand like he'd seen a ghost. "You're looking for Tucker Place?" "Why?" "Trust no one." But the clock was ticking, and I was out of options. "I'm Denise Tucker," I said, the name feeling strange in my mouth. "Caroline Tucker's daughter." The color drained from his face. Caroline had a daughter? He set his cup down before he dropped it, then sat down hard on the stool. "She never." I didn't know. He looked at me with something between shock and grief. "Your mother and I, we knew each other. A long time ago. She was a good person. I'm sorry about what happened to her." "What happened to her?" "James told us his name was James, that he owned a mechanic shop down the street." Looked away toward the window, jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to swallow. "She got sick. I'm really sick. Cancer. But before that." He turned back to me, and I saw the memory playing behind his eyes. "She had plans. Big plans for that land. Said she was building something for." He stopped mid-sentence, and I watched realization dawn across his face like sunrise breaking through clouds. "For you," he finished, his voice barely above a whisper. "She was building it for you." James drove us out to Scotty's farm in his pickup truck, 5 miles down a road that turned from asphalt to gravel to something that was mostly hope and dirt. The land opened up on both sides, fields that had once been cultivated, now growing wild, fence posts leaning like old men too tired to stand straight. Scotty was on his porch shelling peas when we pulled up. 70s, white, face weathered like old leather that had seen too many seasons. But his eyes were still sharp, and they locked onto me the moment I stepped out of the truck. He stood up slowly, peas scattering from his lap onto the wooden planks. "Lord have mercy," he whispered, one hand gripping the porch railing for support. "You look just like her, just like Caroline." Inside, his farmhouse smelled like with smoke and memories. The walls were covered with photographs, decades of them, chronicling a life lived in the same 20-mile radius. Scotty moved to one frame in particular, lifting it down with hands that trembled slightly. "This was your mother," he said, holding it out to me. I took it carefully, afraid it might dissolve at my touch. A young black woman, early 20s, standing beside a tractor with her hand resting on its faded green hood. Pride in her smile, determination in the set of her shoulders, and a face that looked so much like mine it stole my breath. This was Caroline Tucker, my mother, the first time I'd ever seen her as more than a name on a document. "Your grandfather, Marcus Tucker, and I grew up together," Scotty said, settling into his chair like he was preparing to tell a story he'd been holding for too long. "Worked these lands side by side. Black man and white man farming together when that wasn't common around here. When he died, he left everything to Caroline. She was determined to make it work." His expression darkened. "But then she got involved with the wrong man, your father. He was violent. When she got pregnant with you, he got worse." My chest tightened, ribs constricting around my lungs. "So she gave me away because of him?" "No, child." Scotty's voice was firm. "She gave you away to protect you. When you were 2, she found out she had cancer. Terminal. 6 months, maybe a year, if she was lucky. She knew that man would come for you the minute she died, either to use you or hurt you. So she made a plan. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Put you somewhere safe where he'd never find you. Put her land in legal protection so he couldn't touch it. And spent her last 3 years building your inheritance, fixing up the farm, establishing the trust, creating the puzzle only you could solve. What puzzle? Scotty's eyes glinted with something between pride and sorrow. The tractor. Your grandfather built it custom and modified it special. It's got a hidden compartment that only opens for family blood. Fingerprints. DNA. Caroline coded it to recognize only her direct descendant. That's you. My heart pounded against my ribs. Where is it? I'll show you tomorrow at first light. The land's overgrown, but I know the way. He paused, and his expression turned grave. But there's something you need to know. Gerald Briggs, the county supervisor, he's been circling that property like a vulture for years. He knows about the 30-day deadline, and he'll do everything he can to stop you from claiming it. Tomorrow, Scotty will show me the tractor. Tomorrow, I'd learn what my mother died protecting. If you're wondering what Denise found in that tractor, make sure you're subscribed and comment on what city you're watching from, because what happens next changes everything. Scotty's truck lurched down an overgrown road that hadn't seen maintenance in years, branches scraping the sides like skeletal fingers trying to pull us back. We pushed through dense trees that seemed determined to reclaim what humans had abandoned. Then suddenly the clearing opened up and my breath caught in my throat. Tucker Homestead. The barn stood first weather gray with soft with age, but the structure is still definitely strong. The farmhouse had boarded windows and a porch that sagged in the middle but hadn't collapsed. Fields stretched beyond, overgrown with wildflowers and weeds that had turned cultivated land back to prairie. And there, under a half-collapsed equipment shelter that leaned like it was catching its breath, sat the tractor. Orange rust had consumed most of the green paint. The tires were rotted through, rubber crumbling into the earth. The seat was cracked leather, springs visible through splits in the vinyl. But beneath all that decay, I could see solid machinery built to outlast the people who'd worked it. I approached slowly, my hand trembling as I reached out to touch cold metal. This had belonged to my grandfather. My mother had stood here, touched this same hood, planned her future around this machine. My blood had history here. Mary J. wandered off to explore the barn while James circled the tractor with a mechanic's practiced eye. Engine seized, he said, wiping rust from his fingers. But I can fix it. Give me a few days. Scotty pointed to a panel on the tractor's side. That's where the compartment is. But I don't know how to open it. Your mother never told me the exact mechanism. She was secretive about it, paranoid almost. I circled the machine, searching every surface with my fingers. Then I found a small biometric scanner hidden beneath layers of rust, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Solar-powered, somehow still active after 19 years of abandonment. I placed my thumb against the smooth surface. The scanner glowed red. Access denied. Panic clawed at my throat. Why isn't it working? I'm her daughter, her DNA, her blood. Scotty frowned, studying the device. Might need more than a thumbprint. Caroline was paranoid about someone trying to claim it falsely. She might have coded it for blood verification, actual DNA matching, not just fingerprints. James wiped his hands on his jeans. Medical records. If you can prove a biological connection with Caroline's DNA on file somewhere, the scanner might accept you as a verified descendant. The problem crystallized instantly. Getting Caroline's medical records would require a court order, which meant filing paperwork, which meant involving the system, which meant Gerald Briggs would know exactly where I was and what I was trying to do. Denise, Mary J's voice echoed from inside the barn. You need to see this. I found her kneeling in the dirt, holding an old photo album wrapped in plastic sheeting, preserved, protected, intentional. She opened it carefully, and my world tilted. Photographs. Dozens of them. Me as a baby. Me as a toddler taking first steps. I am 3, 4, 5 years old. School photos from St. Catherine's that I'd never seen copies of. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. Someone had been watching. Someone had been documenting my entire life. Caroline. She'd never stopped watching. I picked up one photograph me at age 5 with a gap-toothed smile at a birthday party, cake smeared on my face. I turned it over with shaking hands. In careful handwriting on the back, "My beautiful girl. I wish I could be there. Soon you'll understand. Soon you'll come home." The tears came then, finally. 21 years of walls cracking open like a dam breaking. Mary J. put her arm around my shoulders, and for once, I didn't pull away. The county courthouse was an imposing brick building that seemed designed to make people feel small. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I approached the clerk's window, bureaucracy's cold heart beating in sterile hallways that smelled like old paper and institutional indifference. I slid my petition for medical records release across the counter, hands steadier than I felt. The clerk processed the paperwork with practiced efficiency, then frowned. "You need to speak with Supervisor Briggs," she said, not meeting my eyes. "He's been managing the Tucker estate." Gerald Briggs emerged from an office down the hall, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Late 50s, white, hair slicked back with enough product to reflect the fluorescent lights. He had a politician's smile, wide and practiced, stopping well short of his eyes. "Miss Tucker," he said, reviewing my petition with theatrical concern that made my skin crawl. "I'm afraid this is complicated. The estate has been in legal limbo for nearly 2 decades. Multiple claims have been filed over the years." He checked his calendar with deliberate slowness. "We're actually scheduled to finalize the county seizure in 10 days. That would be day 30 of your deadline, if I'm not mistaken." My blood went cold. "You can't do that. My mother left it to me. Do you have proof?" His smile sharpened like a knife being honed. "The original hasn't been found, and I'm afraid a torn map and a vague letter don't constitute a legal claim." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Of course, if you'd like to contest this, you're welcome to hire an attorney. File motions. These things can take months, maybe years." The realization hit me like ice water. He'd been waiting for this, watching the deadline tick down. He wanted the land, and he positioned himself perfectly to take it. Mary J. had been watching from the hallway, and when Briggs excused himself through the back exit, she followed. I saw her through the window, phone out, trailing him to the parking lot. She stayed just close enough to hear, just far enough to remain invisible street skills that had kept her alive for years. She came back 5 minutes later, eyes blazing. "We've got him," she whispered, pulling me into an empty stairwell. She played the recording, Briggs's voice, smug and clear. "Yeah, the girl showed up, right on schedule. Don't worry, I'll drag this out past day 30. Property transfers to the county. I'll push through the development deal, and you'll get your commission." Corruption. A development deal. Briggs wasn't just seizing the land, he was selling it for profit. James had followed us to the courthouse, and now he leaned against the wall, thinking. "Sister Mary," he said suddenly, "she signed your intake papers when you entered St. Catherine's, right? Caroline must have listed her as emergency contact. She might have documents of the real will, medical records, something legal that Briggs can't dismiss." My hand shook as I dialed the number for St. Catherine's, praying someone would answer. When they transferred me to Sister Mary's room, her voice came through weak and labored, each breath a struggle. "Yes, child," she whispered. "I have Caroline's file. I kept it safe all these years. She made me promise." A pause, the sound of oxygen hissing. "Come home. I'll give you everything. 3 days on a Greyhound bus back to the city. The clock is ticking. 7 days left to save everything my mother had died building." St. Catherine's Chapel smelled like candles and incense, decades of prayers soaked into stone walls. They'd moved Sister Mary's hospital bed into her beloved chapel, the place she'd spent her life serving, now the place she'd chosen to die. Candles flickered on the altar, casting shadows that danced across her pale face. She clutched my hand with surprising strength when I sat beside her, her fingers cold and papery, but grip fierce. "Caroline came to me 19 years ago," she whispered, each word a struggle against failing lungs. "You were barely walking. She was so sick, child, so scared. She begged me to keep you safe, to never let your father find you." Sister Mary reached beneath her pillow with trembling fingers and produced a weathered lockbox. metal worn smooth from years of handling. She gave me this. I was supposed to give it to you on your 21st birthday. I waited too long. Tears slipped down her wrinkled cheeks. Forgive me. Inside the box, Caroline's will, notarized and official, undeniable in its legal precision. Medical records with DNA profiles. Photographs of my mother healthy, then sick, then skeletal, but still fighting. Journal entries in her handwriting. And a sealed letter addressed, in careful script. To Denise, read this first. My hand shook so badly Mary J. had to help me open it. The paper crinkled as I unfolded it, and my mother's voice reached across death to find me. My darling girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I couldn't stay. I'm sorry for every birthday I missed, every tear you cried, every night you wondered if anyone loved you. I loved you. I love you still. Everything I did was to keep you safe and give you a future. The tractor holds more than answers. It holds your legacy. Our family built that land with bare hands and breaking backs. Your great-great-grandfather was enslaved on that land, and when freedom came, he bought it. Every generation since has fought to keep it. That land is your birthright. That land is your power. Don't let them take it. Don't let them win. You are Tucker. We don't quit. Use your blood, your DNA, your claim. The tractor will open for you. Inside is everything deed, bank accounts, my final words. I'm so proud of you. I wish I could have watched you grow into the strong woman I know you've become. Come home, baby girl. Come home. Love forever, Mom. I wept openly, the letter pressed against my chest like I could absorb the words through my skin. Mary J. wrapped her arms around me, while James stood vigil near the door, his own eyes wet. Sister Mary smiled weakly from her bed, oxygen hissing through the tube in her nose. She was right about you, Sister Mary whispered. You're strong. You've always been strong. Now go claim what's yours. That night, Sister Mary died. I held her hand as she went, watching the light fade from her eyes, final act of love from the woman who'd kept me safe when my mother couldn't. She'd carried Caroline's secret for 19 years, waiting for this moment, and now her promise was fulfilled. We left at dawn, armed with documents that proved everything. The will, the medical records, the DNA profiles, the truth. Mary J. James and I raced back to Millbrook County on the first bus out, the lockbox clutched in my lap like it contained my beating heart. For days left. The county courthouse at 9 in the morning felt different this time. I walked through those doors with Caroline's will in my hands, notarized, legal, undeniable, along with her medical records and DNA verification. Mary J. flanked my left side, James my right. We weren't asking permission anymore. I slid the documents across the clerk's desk. I'm filing these as proof of claim to the Tucker estate. I demand immediate recognition. Briggs materialized from his office like a spider, sensing vibrations in its web. He snatched up the papers, scanning them with eyes that narrowed to slits. These could be forgeries, he said, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. We need time to verify authenticity. Mary J. stepped forward, phone in hand. Unless you want fraud charges filed against you, you'll accept these documents. Now, she pressed play, and Briggs' recorded voice filled the room. I'll drag this out past day 30. Push through the development deal. You'll get your commission. His face went from pale to crimson in seconds. The clerk watched with wide eyes as her supervisor's corruption played out in surround sound. Other county employees had emerged from their offices, drawn by the commotion. Briggs was cornered, and he knew it. Process the claim, he said through gritted teeth, then disappeared into his office, slamming the door. The clerk's stamp hit the paper with the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Claim recognized. Denise Tucker, legal heir to Tucker Homestead. But we weren't done. Caroline had built in one final requirement, a legal technicality that meant even with recognized ownership, I had to physically open the tractor's compartment before day 30, or the trust would expire and the property would revert to the county anyway. She designed it that way deliberately, not just to inherit, but to claim it, to engage with her legacy with my own hands. We drove back to the homestead with 4 days left on the clock. James had the tractor engine running rough and sputtering, belching black smoke, but alive. The sound of it was like hearing a heartbeat after decades of silence. The biometric scanner glowed on the side panel, waiting. I had Caroline's DNA profile from the medical records, but when I tried to upload the digital data, the scanner rejected it. It needed a living biological sample. Blood, Scotty said, his weathered face gravely. Your blood. You're Caroline's daughter. Your DNA will match hers close enough for the scanner to recognize the family connection. My hands shook as I pulled out the pocket knife James handed me. I pricked my finger, watching the blood well up dark and red against my skin. Caroline's blood, Marcus's blood, generations of Tuckers flowing through my veins. I pressed my bloody thumb to the scanner. The light flashed red. My heart stopped. Then it turned green. Mechanical whirring filled the air gears that hadn't moved in 19 years, grinding back to life. The side panel of the tractor slid open with a metallic screech, revealing a hidden compartment that had been sealed since my mother's hands last touched it. Inside was a metal box, fireproof and sealed. I lifted it out with trembling hands, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. Everything Caroline had fought for. Everything she'd died protecting. Everything she'd left for me to find. We gathered in the farmhouse that Mary J. and James had spent the last week clearing dust swept away, windows unboarded to let light stream through rooms that had been dark for too long. The metal box sat on the old kitchen table like an altar, and we formed a circle around it. Denise, Mary J., James, Scotty. The family my mother had never met, but somehow knew I'd find. I opened the box. Inside was everything she'd promised and more. An updated deed showing 187 acres legally protected in perpetual family trust, current assessed value, $1.2 million. Bank documents proving Caroline had established an agricultural trust fund that had grown with 19 years of compound interest to $250,000. A detailed business plan, typed and annotated in her handwriting. Tucker Legacy Farm Transitional Housing and Agricultural Training for Foster Youth. She dreamed this. I planned it, built it for me to finish. Photographs spilled across the table. Caroline through the years. Healthy and young, standing in fields she'd just planted. Thin and bald from chemo, still working, still building, determination burning in eyes that looked so much like mine. Photos of her repairing the barn, fixing fences, creating the infrastructure I'd inherit. Every image was proof that she'd fought until her last breath. At the bottom of the box was a thumb drive. James pulled out his laptop with hands that weren't quite steady. I plugged it in, and the screen flickered to life. Caroline appeared thin, bald, exhausted from chemotherapy. But her eyes were bright with fierce love that reached across 19 years of silence. Hey, baby. Her voice cracked slightly, and I felt something in my chest crack with it. I wish I could say this to your face, but we don't always get what we wish for. I'm not going to see you grow up. That kills me more than this cancer ever could. She paused, gathering strength. But here's what I need you to know. You were wanted. You were planned for. Every single day since you were born, I fought for your future. This farm, this land, I made it beautiful for you. I made it productive. I made it yours. Tears blur my vision, but I couldn't look away. You're going to have a choice when you get here. You can sell it, take the money, start over somewhere else. That's okay. I'll understand. She leaned closer to the camera, and I could see the love radiating from her like heat. Or you can do what I dreamed about, use this land to help other kids like you. Kids who aged out with nothing. Give them a place to learn, to heal, to build something. Her smile was sad but certain. Either way, know this, you come from fighters. You come from survivors. You come from love so deep it crossed death to reach you. She pressed her palm to the screen like she could touch me across time. Welcome home, Denise. Welcome home. The screen went black. The only sound in the room was my quiet crying. James spoke first, his voice rough. I didn't know. When Caroline and we were close back in the day. She never told me she had a daughter. She was protecting you even from people who cared about her. Scotty wiped his eyes with a weathered hand. Your grandfather would be proud. Marcus always said this land would outlive us all. Guess he was right. Mary J. squeezed my shoulder. So what are you going to do? I looked around the table at these people who'd shown up, who'd helped, who'd become family without being asked. I thought about every kid still sitting at St. Catherine's, wondering if anyone cared, wondering if they'd ever belong anywhere. "We're going to build what my mother dreamed," I said, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. Tucker Legacy Farm opens next spring. 6 months later, Tucker Homestead had transformed into something my mother would have recognized not as it had been in her time, but as she'd dreamed it could become. The farmhouse wore fresh paint the color of cream, a new roof that didn't leak when it rained, and a rebuilt porch that no longer sagged under weight. The barn had been converted to a communal living space with 12 beds for young people aging out of foster care kids who'd run out of time in the system but not out of need for a place to belong. Fields that had grown wild were now planted with crops, green shoots pushing through dark soil like hope made visible. And the tractor, fully restored, ran smooth and steady, a teaching tool for agricultural training and a monument to the legacy that had brought us all here. I stood in the same spot I'd stood 6 months ago, backpack on my shoulders, staring at the weathered barn. But everything was different now. I belonged here. This was home. Mary J. had become operations manager, using those street skills that had kept her alive to teach kids how to navigate systems designed to forget them. James ran the agricultural program, teaching mechanics and farming and the kind of self-sufficiency that came from working land with your own hands. Scotty was grandfather to everyone, storyteller, historian, keeper of the Tucker legacy he'd watched unfold across 3 generations. The first group arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. 6 teenagers, scared and skeptical, carrying everything they owned in garbage bags and beat-up backpacks. I remembered that feeling, the weight of not belonging anywhere, of being nobody's child. "Welcome to Tucker Legacy Farm," I told them, standing on the porch my mother had once stood on. "This is your home for as long as you need it. You're not here because someone feels sorry for you. You're here because you're family, and the family doesn't quit." I showed them the tractor, told them Caroline's story, explained the legacy they were now part of, how land that had been worked by enslaved hands had been bought by free ones, how it had been protected, fought for, nearly lost, and reclaimed, how love could build bridges across death itself. One girl, 17 with eyes too old for her face, asked, "Why are you doing this?" I smiled, and for the first time in my life, the expression felt complete. Because someone did it for me. Because my mother spent her last years building something bigger than herself. Because we deserve better than the world gave us. That evening, I sat on the porch with Mary J., watching the sun paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. "Have you ever thought about how different things could have gone?" she asked. "Every day. If Sister Mary hadn't given me that envelope, if I hadn't met you at the bus station, if I'd given up, but you didn't. No, because my mother didn't. She fought for me even after she was gone. Least I could do was fight back." We watched the sun set over fields Caroline had planted, land Marcus had fought to keep, a legacy that now extended to dozens of young people who finally had a place to call home. I pulled out the worn letter I still carried, its creases so deep they'd nearly split the paper. "You are Tucker. We don't quit." I whispered to the wind, to my mother, to ancestors I'd never met, but whose blood ran through my veins. "I didn't quit, Mom. I came home." Some inheritances are measured in acres and dollars. But the real inheritance was learning that love doesn't always look like staying. Sometimes love looks like sacrifice, like building futures you'll never see, like trusting that the seeds you plant will grow long after you're gone. Denise Tucker found more than land. She found her name, her story, her purpose. She found home.